Deputy Bríd Smith.
Okay. Thanks, Minister. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions under subhead 5 on the job announcements in the IDA supported client companies. And the one that jumps out at me completely is the first one, Uber. Uber, if people don't know, is a very large smart company that provides an app for people to perform sort of taxi business. And we can see by this there's initially 100 jobs created. These are mainly in the Limerick area, as I understand it. But my research into Uber and their record shows that this is a company that has created something like 30,000 jobs in Britain and Ireland, or has not created but operates with 30,000 drivers in Britain and Ireland. But there are several court cases pending in terms of their treatment of workers and whether or not they fulfil the contracts to them. And I really want to ask the Minister if she's concerned at all about that record and about the fact that Uber are being taken in front of labour relations bodies in Britain in particular for example, illegal deductions from the pay achieved by some of these drivers, and also for paying well below the minimum wage in many cases. I also understand that in dealing with an app from a company like Uber, a driver does not necessarily have to have a public service vehicle licence like a normal taxi driver has to have, and as we know, the deregulation of the taxi industry in this country has caused severe pressure and competition on those who have gone to the bother of both training for, paying the expenses for their licences and fulfilling their commitments to buy those plates. So I'd like the Minister to comment on why the IDA and therefore public money should be supporting a totally unethical, what appears to be a totally unethical in terms of workplace practices company, and what are the great returns and the value returns for us. I'd also further like to ask, if we look at page 26 and again under subhead 5, some of the companies that we are allegedly supporting, I mean, it seriously begs question as to why public money is being used to finance something like Credit Suisse, like Amazon, Coca-Cola, giant multinational corporations, which surely to God should not need the support of the IDA, and if they do, what are we getting back from them in return? For these companies would also be availing of very low corporation tax and also many tax breaks that we've seen recently with other companies. I want to talk a bit about microfinance.
Sorry, you mentioned Coca-Cola and what other?
Credit Suisse.
Oh, yeah.
Amazon, and in particular Uber. I will come back later on to the wider points about I wanted to raise about job microfinance and how we don't seem to support local small and medium enterprises as much in terms of making a comparison. I want to ask you a few questions about that, but just on subhead 5, that's all the questions I have.
Thank you, Deputy. Minister, would you like to answer those two?
Yes, I'll certainly endeavour to do that. First of all, if I can come to Deputy Neville's, you asked about how we structure or how we decide on IDA site visits.
Capital expenditure, yeah. And
the capital expenditure. Well, first of all, so what I will say to you is that first of all, we make the site visits. The IDA, meet the clients, they talk to the clients, and then they introduce them to different sites. And obviously, it's very hard to encourage them to go to different sites if they don't want to. So that's the first thing to understand. The second thing, and I'm always getting questions, how many site visits to this county, to that county and to the other. And sometimes when you look at the numbers, it looks quite skewed, because sometimes the same company will go to the same site on a different number of occasions. And the other thing that I just want everyone to understand is that a lot, and the majority of the increase in, we'll say, jobs that IDA bring into Ireland are with existing companies. So actually there's no need for site visits at all. And one other point I just want to make that I think needs to be said here is that it's, that not every company announces jobs. So it may not be a showing up in our statistics. So site visits to all the regions have increased. There's been 154 outside Dublin. So you want to also know what the question was. How do we pick the regions? Is that how we pick the sites? Wasn't that it? So, so in 2000, was it sites or site visits?
The capital expenditure. What the term is the capital expenditure?
Okay. So, I'll just come back to that little section in one moment. Now, Uber, please. Can I just say to you that most countries are coming to terms with the new forms of work, such as the shared economy, and the ILO and the European Foundation for Living and Working Conditions are conducting research. In Ireland, we have a strong suite of employment rights, and if you're aware that people are being paid below the minimum wage, you must report it, and I'd ask you that. You gave instances of what's happening in England. I mean, people are using Uber. I use the other one myself. What's the other one called? Halo. And again, there's still local enough taxi drivers that are all signed up to Halo. So Uber is a matter really for the Department of Transport, and any issues regarding
employment
breaches...
rights issue, Minister, and that's why I'm querying it. Are you aware of Uber's record in our neighbours, Brexit and all? Our neighbours have many cases going before the courts of abuse of employment rights by Uber, and we have many complaints coming to us. Now, we will bring them to your attention.
Sorry, Deputy, today I'm afraid we're not dealing with employment rights.
First of all,
sorry, Minister, we're dealing specifically with Vote 32. Next Tuesday we're going to agree a works programme for until December and into next year, and we're going to look at different pieces of legislation. But today, particularly, we welcome the Minister here today, and it's just in relation to the mid-year review of the position of her Department of Jobs, Enterprise and Innovation. I'm not trying to stifle you, but next Tuesday we will be out of camera and we will be discussing everything we want to work on for the next 12 months, and we will invite the Minister back in again to address those. But for today specifically, it's just in relation to the mid-year review of the position.
I understand. My question is not asking the Minister to actually tackle the workers' rights issues today. I'm asking the Minister to justify why public money is being spent on companies such as Uber, such as Coca-Cola, such as Amazon and Credit Suisse. Why are we supporting global companies with poor records on workers' rights, and what sort of money we're spending on them? Now, surely that comes into the financial review.
I'll tell you why exactly. There are 187,000 people in this country employed by FDI companies. And I actually make no apologies for that, for those 187,000 people. And can I say to you that every time that I go for questions and PQs all week, every second week, how many site visits, how many IDA companies are opening up in the different countries. So actually most of the deputies, that's what they're looking for. But there's 187,000 people working in those companies. They're really well paid. Most of them are absolutely permanent, and as I said, really well paid. And they're not temporary, they're not minimum wage, they're nothing like it.
Thank you, Minister, but I'm afraid this deputy is concerned about the status of employment and about the level of decent jobs and the sort of pay that workers receive. They may not be the 187,000, but there's quite a significant number of them.
Once you've mentioned, Deputy, if you don't mind me saying, you mentioned Amazon, you mentioned Coca-Cola, you mentioned Uber. They're not the minimum wage companies. They're not them.
My question was not...
With respect, this is becoming a two-way conversation here. There are other members who wish to contribute. I mean, I think the Deputy has had ample opportunity to ask the question, and I think the Minister should be allowed to move on.
Ample opportunity. I think my question is being misread or misunderstood, whether it's deliberate or not. My question is, why are we supporting these global companies that least need it when we have our own local enterprises that need the support? And I'm using one of the reasons for my query.
Once again, I would like to say, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but once again I would like to say the Minister is here today for one reason and one reason only. We're looking at the mid-year review